right, we just came out of a hot stretch in July. So what better time than to go dive into the hot towns, right? So I'm going to do this month a little bit differently because usually I like to just go over the very top towns, but there's such a long list for one category that I just want to go through the list. So I'm not going to break all these towns down, because if I did that, this video would be super long. But also I don't want to leave any out because they're all in this category, and this is like the bridge that goes into the hottest towns, which is how I'll end the video, and I'll deep dive into those. So the number of those isn't going to be as long, you know, doing the deep dive, because I'm doing this list. But let's stop talking and let's get to it, right? So these towns here were 6% above asking, okay? And just to give you, you know, a reference point, overall Massachusetts was 2% above asking for overall Massachusetts. So these towns and cities here were 6% above asking. So who's on the list? Who's 6% above asking? So we had Andover, 6% above, Dayton, which is in my hometowns. So if you watched my hometowns video, you saw, hey, Dayton's doing really good. Hey, they made the hot towns list. So that was pretty cool to see one of my hometowns, you know, make the list, because this is overall Massachusetts. Then we have East Hampton, 6% above, Franklin, Granby, Hanson, Northampton, Norwood, Plainville, Topsfield, Wakefield, and Wilbraham. So congratulations to all those towns. If you're selling in there, it's the hot towns, right? If you're looking to buy, you want the other list, you want the cold towns list. But you know, you got to give and take, right? Because a lot of times you're in both positions, unless you're a first-time home buyer. All right, now we're going to dive into the hottest towns overall in Massachusetts. And again, just to give you the reference point, like we just said, 2% above asking is the reference point overall Massachusetts. But what about average list price or average sales price in overall Massachusetts, or days on market? So here's your reference guide for that. Okay, so the average list price in Massachusetts was $891,000. The average sale price, $904,000. And the average days on market, 33. So there's your reference points. Now let's dive into the hottest towns. All right, so let's start in Wrentham. Wrentham, 7% over asking. Average list price, $719,000. Average sales price, $769,000. Average days on market, 14. That's it. And this was based on 5 homes. And the caveat to make the list is got to be 3 homes or more, unless something crazy is going on and I just want to mention it. But you got to have at least 3 or more to make the list. All right, so let's dive a little further into Wrentham. So all the categories, all the homes sold in this category here, from $600,000 to $999,000. All the homes are in that category. And each of those categories, you know, breaks it down into, you know, $100,000 increments. And they were each, you know, 7% above, 7% above, 8% above, 6% above. So, you know, very healthy numbers if you're looking to sell in Wrentham. All right, now let's look at Reading. In Reading, 7% above asking. Average list price, $1,018,000. Average sales price, $1,094,000. So pretty big jump right there. And that was based on 26 homes. So that's the average based on 26 homes. And average days on market, 23. So let's look at some of the categories. So some of the categories were really, really high, right? So what's funny here, though, is there's a little bit of a range of some colder categories, right? So let's look into it. Let's dissect a little bit. So what are the really hot categories, right? So 900,000 to 999,000, 3 homes in that category, and they were on average 13 days on market, and they went 11% above asking. And then the category right above that, 1 million to 1,499,000, 8 homes in that category, 37 days on market. So a lot longer on market, but also 11% over asking. So in real numbers, you know, on average, you listed it at 1,067,000 and it sold for 1,179,000. So over $100,000 more in that category is what they were getting on average, you know, over asking. And let's look at the 1.5 million to 1.99 million, 14% over asking. You know, that was only 2 homes, but still 14% above. So only 13 days on market. And looking at the numbers there, average list price, $1,409,000. Average sales price, $1,605,000. So 14%, when you get over the $1 million mark, I mean, that's a much bigger dollar amount, obviously, math, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. But what about the cold town? There's one house that stood out to me, and I didn't look it up, but maybe there's something going on with this house. But it went for 7% below asking. So it was on the market for $549,000, and it sold for $510,000. So it was on the market for 31 days, 7% below. And then as soon as you go to the category right above that, you know, I like these lines of demarcation, the $600,000 to $699,000 range, 4% above asking. So for whatever reason, you know, that one home in that 500 to 599 range, which is the highest range in Massachusetts overall for number of homes, in Reading, you know, went for 7% below asking. But all the other categories were all above asking, 4% above, 5%, 4%. The most number of homes, and that's what I wanted to point out actually earlier. So the most number of homes was the 1 million to 1,499,000. That's the one that was 11% above, and it had the most number of homes. So that was the one that was, 1,067,000. They got an extra 100,000, 1,179,000. So I wanted to mention that earlier when I was talking about it, but I forgot. That was the most number of homes. But I wanted to make sure I got that out there before I moved on to the next town. All right, who's next? Arlington. Arlington, always on this list, right? It was on it last month. It was on it last year. It was on it the year before. I mean, it could have been on it all the years I've been doing this. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. But Arlington, consistently hot, consistently on the list. Let's get into it, right? So 7% above asking. And in Arlington, again, they were all chunked together in this big range from 700,000 to 2,499,000. All the homes sold, every single category in that range, all had homes sold, right? So we were looking at 30 homes overall, and the average list price was $1,212,000, and the average sales price was $1,293,000. Average days on market, 22. So remember, Massachusetts was 33. This is 22. So let's dive into it, right? So what categories had the most homes? So the 1 million to 1,499,000 had the most number of homes here. So that's 11 homes, and 11 of the 30. And that was by far the biggest number for one category. On average, 16 days on market in that category, and they went on average 9% above asking. Average sale there, 1,179,000 was the asking, and it sold for 1,265,000. And just to dive into this other category, because it really jumped out at me, the $2,499,000 range was only 2 homes in that range, but 14% over asking in that range. So I had to mention that on here. And then all the other ranges, they're all above asking, 2% above, 3%, 6%, 7%. But Arlington, again, congratulations on the hot town list. Jump over to Melrose. Melrose again, they were on it last month. They're on it again this month. So a lot of good things happening in Melrose. If you're selling, let's dive into it, right? So on average, 10% over asking, 10%. So that's a big jump over these other towns based on 27 homes. So not 3 homes here, 27 homes on average, 10% over asking in Melrose. So average list priced $972,000, and the average sales price, drum roll, $1,074,000. So that's a pretty big jump right there. Average days on market, 18. So things are selling quick. Things are selling for over asking. So Melrose, definitely a tough place to get into if you're looking to move in there. And if you're looking to sell, you got some great opportunities, to market your home right now. So let's look at the categories, because here's some things that are really going to astonish you a little bit, because we had 10% over asking for the whole town on 27 homes. But we had a couple categories that were actually below asking. So The 500,000 to 599,000, that's so popular throughout Massachusetts, 1% below asking. And then the category above that, 600,000 to 699,000, 1% below asking. But soon as you go above 699,000 and you go into the 700,000 to $799,000 range, boom, 5% over asking. So when you're in the 699 range, 1% below, you go to 700 to 799, 5% above. So big jump right there. Let's look at some of the key categories here. So 800,000 to 899,000, it was only one home, but it went on average 11% above asking. So just to put real numbers here, it listed at 724,000. So just picture you put your home on the market, 724,000, and they received 808,000. So 6 days on market. Also 6 days. Somebody must have really wanted that home because it only lasted 6 days and it was way over asking. So let's look at some of the other categories. So here, let's jump out again. So number of homes here we're seeing on the hot towns list from the 1 million to $1,499,000 range. Number of homes in that category are really driving the sales. So you got 9 homes that sold in that category, and they went on average 13% over asking. So 1,045,000 was the list price. 1,183,000. So another 140,000 is what they were getting on average, for those 9 homes. And then the category above that, 1.5 million to $1.9 million range, 4 homes there, 17% above asking. So there are some numbers. 1,409,000 was the list. 1,627,000 was what they sold for. So a lot of hot towns, 10 days on market, 10 days. That's it for that 1.5 million to $1.9 million. 10 days on market, 17% over asking. And that was 4 of the homes right there. So not just one home. In this whole town overall, 27 homes. So really good things happening in Melrose. All right, and now for the grand finale. Just like the 4th of July fireworks, we should light them off here. Let's see, what's the number 1 town? Ipswich. So I don't know if Ipswich has ever been the number 1 town before. Not that I recall since I've been doing this, but Ipswich, 11% over asking overall, based on 11 homes. So easy to remember, 11 homes, 11% over asking, right? Average list price, $827,000. Average sales price, $904,000. Average days on market, 26. And here, everything was grouped together, right? So you go from 600,000 to 1,499,000. Every home, every category there had homes sold. So let's look at what had the most homes sold. So there was actually a tie. So from 800,000 to 899,000, 4 of the homes were in that category, and they went on average 8% over asking. And then the other category that had the most number of homes was 4, because we just said it's a tie, 1 million to 1,499,000, 8% over asking there. And average list price, $1,975,000. So just say 1 million, I guess, or 1,100. And then it went for 1,072,000. So you're getting about $72,000 more dollars in that category on average. But here's a couple. They were one-offs, I guess, but the numbers were big, right? So one home was listed at $624,000. So just picture you're putting your home on the market at $624,000, and it sold for $755,000. So that was 21% over asking. Now it was one home, but that was a big jump over asking. And then the other home that had a big jump, it was put on the market for $499,000, and it sold for $660,000. 32% over asking. So a couple of really hot homes, in Ipswich. Overall, had the highest average over asking, 11% of all the hot towns. So congratulations, Ipswich. You got the top spot this month. So, that's it for the hot towns. Thank you for watching. If you don't watch my Massachusetts real estate market update, watch that. It's going to go over all the Massachusetts, what's going on overall Massachusetts. We dive into some of the counties, Bristol County. We did a special on Norfolk. We also did a special on Plymouth County. And, you know, we just dived into that. My hometowns are always on it. You know, the Swansea, Seekonk, Somerset, Dighton, Rehoboth, that whole area. So, you know, a lot more information in there. If you want something to compare these two, definitely highly recommend that you watch that video. But other than that, hope you're having a great summer. Hope you've been enjoying the hot towns. And as always, see you at the next video.